Hi, Bill. How are you? Hi.
How you been?
Good.
Everybody that I've talked to, I'm going to go visit Drax, and he goes, holy
Does he
I want to
exist?
go. No, I want to go. God, Yvonne knows you exist. Gene
Yeah.
Miller said to say hi.
That's right.
She's been wanting to come down and see you. So no, it's not that, does he exist? It's, holy cow, man.
I'm a living legend.
You are. That's right. It's better than the other kind of legend. I'm sorry, this ready?
Station ID,
3,
please, Bill.
2, 1. You are listening to the Drax Files Radio Hour with Joe Yardley.
Hello and welcome to the Drax Files Radio Hour. I'm Draxter Dupre. Station ID today by Bill May, who ran the Kansas to Cairo project in Second Life out of the U.S. State Department. Those were the pioneering days. Getting nostalgic. I'm here with Joe Yardley. Hi, Joe.
Hello.
And we're stuck in the virtual attic while everyone else is hobnobbing at the Game Developers Conference in San Francisco. Nobody invites us to these things ever. No South by Southwest, no GDC. What's going on here, Joe?
They probably know I don't like the sun, so that's why they won't invite me.
At least you have an Oculus Rift now.
Yes.
Oh my
I've got
God.
one in my hands, and I'm so excited, but I didn't get a chance to try it before the recording of the show.
Okay, so we have Ben Lang on today, who runs the Road to VR blog. He gives us an overview today of the smorgasbord of all the VR gear out there. And listeners, trust me, the Oculus critics will get information as well.
Was he angry?
Ben was not angry. We are going to also, in that interview, resolve our issues, virtual reality versus virtual world. And I can tease you already. We are welcome. We can join the revolution. So, as always, really quickly, you can call us. You can leave a message about anything. Don't forget, we're collecting ideas on how to revamp the SL orientation experience. Call us with your input. Skype Drax Files or in-world message or note card. You can subscribe to the show on Stitcher, which is a great way to be up to date. You can also fast forward through my rants and still listen to Joe.
Yeah. That's very good.
Now, last week, we had a giveaway, another Leap Motion, our little controller, our neat device you put in front of your machine, and it senses where your hands are, and boom, you have sort of a Minority Report type interaction going on.
It's magic.
It is, right? I'm not exaggerating, Joe, right? Because, I mean, they're sponsoring us and they're paying us a lot of money to say that, but it's still true.
I wish. But this is the kind of stuff I was, imagining when I was a little girl about, science fiction sort of future sort of stuff.
We have a winner from our SL only giveaway from last week. We did the drawing just before taping the show. I had help again from my trusted assistant. So here are pieces of paper in this jewelry box, and please pick one.
Okay.
You're not looking. And what do we read on it?
Cinnamon Mistwood.
Cinnamon Mistwood. You win. Congratulations. All right, so congrats, Cinnamon Mistwood.
What a lovely name.
We're giving away another one today just for SL folks. You need to check the Drax Files profile feed. There you will find the snapshots of me standing in a location, and you have to write on the feed that you know where this is, and then send a private IM to Drax Files with the name of the location. Deadline coming Thursday, 10 a.m. All right? Okay, so now let's get on with the real news. Joe, this just in. We have Game Developers Conference in San Francisco. We now know that there is an Oculus Rift Dev Kit 2 on sale, probably being shipped in July or so.
They've only just announced it, but they are telling us, the people from Oculus are telling us that if you are just an average user, you just want to try it out and play with it, don't buy it. Wait for the official version, the public version.
And that led you to speculate, and I think that's a kind of an accurate analysis, that we might see it for the Christmas shopping season.
I think so. I think that they are going to release the commercial version this year.
Let's listen to a little bit from the trailer that Oculus put out. Here is CEO Palmer Luckey about the new dev kit.
We spent the last year working on building Developer Kit 2 as an update to our original development kit, something that gets a lot closer to what we want the consumer version to be and lets developers make much better virtual reality experiences. VK2 has lower latency, higher frame rate, higher resolution, and low persistence, along with full 6-DoF positional tracking. All of these combined allow for much better gameplay experiences and a much more comfortable user experience. Another huge improvement that we made is using a low persistence display. Our low persistence display shows an image only for a brief amount of time, time. Then the display goes dark until the next frame comes in. Doing this at a high enough frame rate means that your brain does not see any motion blur or any judder in the resulting image.
So that's exciting. Oculus Rift Dev Kit 2. Sony takes on the Rift. Was announced at Game Developers Conference. This is PlayStation only, right?
Yeah, and it is at least another year away from being released.
The Sony headset is called the Morpheus.
That's very cute. But it is fantastic that Sony has decided to do this. In the end, the more the merrier, of course.
But I do have to say, and maybe that's just because I'm just so not a gamer, isn't the time over to tie these things to one console?
Well, I would have said yes not that long ago, but then they brought out a game that's called The Last of Us, and I've heard so much about it that I am so tempted to go and buy the computer just for that game.
But who has that discretionary income? You know, if I already have a functioning, nice current computer in the home and I can just plug in a device in there, I always think the console era is over.
I wish it was, but it is branding. And what would you do if tomorrow Linden Lab decided we are going to release Second Life only on a console?
Haha.
You'd buy it. I'd buy it.
Well, of course I would.
So, you know,
I would buy 5 consoles so I have them in every room of the house. Can you spell fanboy?
can you spell weirdo?
So this is really just battling it out with proprietary games.
You know, it's like, you know, my parents still have the Betacom video recorder, Betamax. You know, it is this big contest or maybe even a war and someone who's going to win it, or perhaps they're both going to win. I know quite a few young kids who've got both consoles.
Now, let's move on. The Second Life grid grows again, which is amazing. It's been called the Ebbe effect. I would like to call it the Drax Files effect.
Yeah, sure. But, you know, it is a very small change and it is not that big a deal. It's not that massive, except that it hasn't happened for over a year. And then suddenly it happens twice. So, you know, it is a little bit of positive news.
The Second Life economy is tied to the real world economy in the sense that for most people it is entertainment, and if your entertainment budget is little, you look very closely what you are consuming. It would be very interesting to have more data if this is tied to the bikini advertisement, which I want to get into next, which you have a problem with.
Oh, don't get me started.
The bikini campaign.
Oh, it's horrendous.
What's the problem with it?
Besides being a bit shallow and tacky and sad, you know, hello, look, we've got babes in bikinis, come play with us.
Well, IMVU has those too, and they make bank.
Yeah, but are we IMVU? I think we're a little bit more than that. You know, I don't have a problem with Linden Lab or anyone promoting or advertising that sort of thing, because it is part of Second Life. We do have lots of people running around in bikini.
I think we have to briefly clarify what we're talking about. This is a banner ad that's been popping up online with 2 bikini-clad women advertising Second Life.
And I would really like to see Linden Lab try and advertise the other side of Second Life, because why would people not choose IMVU, which is a little bit easier to work and has a lot more users? If you just want to chat with babes in bikinis, there are so many things you can do on the internet. Don't Google that.
Yeah, chat roulette. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for instance.
Yeah, they don't even have bikinis anymore. Okay, go ahead.
They're not even bothering with bikinis. But, you know, Second Life, it has much more to offer. The best things about Second Life, the things that draw me to Second Life, they're not being advertised.
I agree with you, but the problem here is obviously that the numbers show that most people who then bring in the money for Linden Lab are using Second Life for leisurely shopping or hanging out at the beach, let's say. I have a problem as well that there is really no diversity shown in that ad campaign, and I would think it would be fairly easy to add a little bit more breadth and diversity. And I do also see the danger that people who had incredible value getting out of Second Life, that they are really turned off by that. And that is a negative effect that is not good. For instance, if you or I go out, we beat people over the head with how cool Second Life is, and then they see an ad like this.
Exactly.
They go like, what is Joe and Drax, what are they talking about? I'm not interested in bikinis.
It reinforces the stereotype and the bad reputation that I've talked about for a zillion billion times. And, you know, it's not that difficult to change it. And, we know that this works because a lot of people join Second Life, but we also know that a lot of people who join Second Life don't stay very long.
Well, I'm contradicting myself in the sense that now I'm going to say that it is difficult, though, if you just have one billboard. What are you going to show on that billboard, right? Because if you show vampires and somebody is not into vampires, you lose that, you waste that ad space. But if you have someone who is totally into vampires, you get something out of that ad space.
Yeah, of course. But in this banner, in case you haven't seen it yet, we see two women in bikinis and a gentleman, I think, he's winking, not quite sure, standing behind them, having all sorts of devious thoughts. There's 3 people in this advertisement. Why not have one bikini babe, one steampunk woman, and one furry? I don't know. I mean, the idea is that we show in every advertisement that Second Life is your world and you can do pretty much whatever you want. Why would you limit yourself to showing just one very narrow side of Second Life?
Listeners, call us, and listeners, comment. What do you think about that ad campaign? And tie it in. Share your ideas about the new user experience. We're going to have some audio of a noob actually taped, was standing there with a tape recorder while somebody signed up and went through the experience. Fascinating. So we're going to have that, but we want the listeners to share your thoughts on the ad campaign. What can we do better? Let's just do it positively. Let's not just bitch about it, but let's find some better ideas.
Yeah, send us your ideas. What would you do?
And then we will sell them to Linden Lab.
Yeah, and pretend that we invented them.
Speaking about terms of service, the topic of Linden Lab terms of service, next week we'll have prominent Second Life designer Richard Goldberg on to talk about it from his perspective. Meantime, I just want to play a soundbite from my favorite show on the media from WNYC in New York. There's an interview with Alex Ross from the New Yorker magazine about intergalactic intellectual property on the unmanned spaceship Voyager 1, which has just left the solar system. Just recently, there's a golden vinyl record on board with a selection of music that was deemed important at the time of the launch in 1977. So just in case it encounters aliens, that they know that we listen to Bach, Beethoven, Chuck Berry, and others. The Beatles didn't get on that record because there were some legal issues. So here, I just want to play the soundbite. Here's On the Media's Bob Garfield talking to Alex Ross about intellectual property and how it applies to outer space.
They ran into copyright issues. Tell me about Laurie Spiegel.
She's a very important American electronic composer who's worked in many different media and was one of the first to really explore computer music. And so at the time, they essentially commissioned her to create this piece based on Johannes Kepler's theory that you could make music from plotting planetary orbits. NASA typed up this contract, which they sent to Laurie Spiegel, and it says, NASA shall have the right to use, reproduce, perform, sell, and distribute the work or any portion thereof in any and all media without limitation throughout the world and extraterrestrially. And obviously, it's that final adverb there, which is the eyebrow raiser.
Although not the one that was a sticking point for Laurie Spiegel.
I know. Well, what she kind of thought, well, it's fine if they want to have the rights to this piece for all time in the infinity of outer space, but I'd like to keep the rights here on Earth. And so she simply crossed out the phrase throughout the world and signed it and sent it back. And to the best of her recollection, there was actually no problem with that.
Probably a very prudent move on her part legally, because it's going to be a lot easier for her to collect damages from, let's say, the Walt Disney Company than it ever would have been for Planet K1631.
Yeah, if it were so easy to just cross out the part of the terms of service we don't like whenever, we're presented with it before logging into any given digital service, including Second Life. One could argue that the process of disputing parts of a contract was a bit easier before the digital age. And, essential services are now in the hands of a few Silicon Valley giants. Let's just face it, and we're forced to accept it before we log in.
If you don't like it, you don't have to log in, but that means you shut yourself off.
Exactly. There's experiments with folks who tried to live without Google for a week. I have to try to find that article. We are reliant on services that that very much force us to accept their terms, or live on their terms, or play on their terms, if you will. A little bit more on the IP issue in the digital realm. Cory Doctorow is a well-known author, probably known to many of our listeners, a speaker and blogger at Boing Boing. And he wrote an editorial about the companies that run free worlds, what we call free, like Second Life or other games, nonetheless, where the company controls if you're in or out in the light of free expression in the digital realm, and as it relates to free expression in the offline world. One hypothetical example that he uses in the editorial is that if you're a merchant in Second Life and you do something that Linden Lab does not like, you're out and all your nice content is gone. Sort of the benevolent dictator monarchy that you don't, better not piss off, otherwise you're out.
What worries me most is that on both sides of the argument, people can just drown the entire situation in technical stuff and words and complicated rules.
But it's simple in the sense that we are living, we're playing by the rules of a company. And I know exactly what listeners will say. They will say, well, there is OpenSim.
I mean, if I was not dependent on having lots of visitors, I would probably run to OpenSim tomorrow. But I like having visitors, and not just a couple, but I want to be able to be in Berlin and meet new people from all over the world. And, the more people I reach, the better, the happier I am. So, and besides that, if I would even consider going to OpenSim, I would have to convince all my, I think it's over 100 tenants now to come with me. And I will have to pack up an entire city.
So you will remain in that abusive relationship with Linden Lab, in other words.
Well, what I would really like is one of the normal Lindens, so not the lawyer Lindens, to try and explain it.
Explain the terms of service, yeah?
Explain them and why they can't change that little thingy, because I think everyone is saying we don't mind the terms of agreement of service, but there's this one little sentence that makes everyone a little bit worried, and if one of them could explain it properly and say, because of this, because of that, or otherwise we can't cooperate with the online service, the mobile service, or if we don't put it in, all Oculus Rift headsets explode. I don't know. If they have a proper reason for it, I'll go, yeah, all right, bye.
It's a communication issue for sure. But on the larger point, though, just hypothetically, are you okay with a service that is running a world, and in exchange for sort of abiding by their laws, you get something out of it, obviously, because they maintain the servers, they do all sorts of things?
Depends on the laws. I mean, I live in a country where they have laws, and in exchange for that, they give me a pretty nice country to live in.
Right, where you can get stoned and have sex on the street. That's a great country.
I don't know what you do when you're visiting in Amsterdam, but...
I'm just trying to be more American than ever before, that's all.
Oh, right. Yeah, stop watching those TV shows. It's a very boring city. I mean, we are stuck until something happens that is really totally unacceptable. Most of us will just accept it or have to. One
of the arguments that I just want to close this issue off with is in regards to the Cory Doctorow article, just the functionality, the fact of being able to design something offline in mesh, and then you do actually have a backup. So
yeah, absolutely. And I am quite happy that I have all my mesh buildings in my computer.
Of course, I already anticipate the comments on the blog or elsewhere that we're just chills and we're spoon-fed by Peter Gray, what we're supposed to say. Wait, let me get the script that Peter sent over. Let's see. What are we supposed to cover next? Oh, yeah, right. SL Go.
I love Linden Labs. Linden Labs. I love Linden Labs.
Linden Labs with 2 S. That's right.
I have to respond to that because, if we are too positive, please, people, it's fine that people think that. If some other people who write blogs are too negative and too cynical, that's fine. People can think that as well. But you can't really say that we are saying what someone else is telling us to say because we're not. It's just not true. I can say whatever I bloody like.
And you actually do.
Yeah, I'm the critical one.
That's right. I'm the fanboy. It's just against me, so forget it.
Yeah. And I'll slap Drax when he gets too excited.
Real quick, Emily Short has politely declined to talk to us about Linden Lab and Versu. Very sad to hear that. I hope she will come back and talk more broadly about her work at a later point. Meantime, we are linking to an interview with her at gamasutra.com about the work she did at Linden Lab with interactive fiction. Now let's go on to our feature. Without any further ado, Ben Lang, founder and executive editor at the Road to VR blog, our prime resource outside of Inara Pay's blog and Mona Eberhardt's news and Loki Elliott's links that he sends me incessantly. We don't have any other research that we do prior to the show. But the Road to VR blog is leading when it comes to virtual reality and also augmented reality devices. I talked to him about that. We got a little sidetracked talking about the issue of virtual world versus virtual reality. So I had to call him back a couple of days later to get more, overview on the available hardware. So let's listen to the initial interview first, and then later we get even more hardware. I asked Ben why the Oculus is talked about so much above all else.
Oculus has become synonymous with virtual reality because they have successfully, for the first time, taken it out of the labs and out of the arcades in some cases. They're bringing it to a point where it looks like we're going to get it into people's homes as a peripheral that might be as common as TV or an expensive keyboard or a nice sound system. You might instead also have an Oculus Rift. And with all of this excitement has popped up a lot of other products.
The Avegant caught my eye, but that's just, they have a successful Kickstarter, I think, right?
Yep, they had a big Kickstarter, and they're going into production. Their headset is more targeted toward media consumption and less virtual reality. It's more of a portable media viewer, and it's a really cool product. But it is definitely not a direct competitor to the Oculus Rift.
How so? Couldn't you do the same interaction in games with the Avegant Glyph?
Technically, yes, you could, but they do not have as wide a field of view. I mean, one of their, what they would call a feature of the product is the ability to, you're not fully enclosed in the world. So they really want people to be able to, say, plug this into their smartphone, jump on the bus, and you got a 30-minute bus ride. So you flip down the headset and, play a phone game or, watch an interview or something like that. But they are saying that they've got an eye on the VR space and they may jump in there at some point, which I think would be great because their display technology is really interesting.
I have a few friends who are very skeptical that the Oculus will be a game changer for bringing virtual reality really back big time into the public mind and for SL specifically. And there are many different reasons that these friends of mine bring forward. But I think the main reason is that other than the hardcore gamer, nobody would put this thing on their heads.
I've given a lot of demos to gamers and non-gamers alike. I've demoed to people who have never played a video game, people who hardly use computers. I've demoed to hardcore users, and there's so many different experiences out there already that there's basically something that's suited for everybody. So, for the non-gamers, it's, do you want to float around space and listen to a beautiful song while you're exploring the universe? For the hardcore gamers, it's, do you want to be wielding two guns and shooting aliens and spinning around? And people are going to want that, and it's going to be very accessible.
What do you think about people who really have never interacted with a computer? Let's just say older folks. This entire generation who has been arguably left out of everything.
I think there's a good parallel to be drawn here between, let's say, Apple's FaceTime and what you're talking about. So FaceTime is basically a very easy to use version of Skype, which is on any modern iPad or iPhone and iPod Touch. You can just say, oh, friend, do you have an iPod Touch? What's your email address? Put it in, and then you're talking to the person. I have a grandma and an aunt that are both very much not technological. This technology is easy to use, and it's useful to them because it does something that they want, which is letting them connect to people that they wouldn't otherwise be able to easily see them, talk to them. I think that if there's a really compelling reason and it's easy enough to do, then people are going to do it. The device becomes something that they don't even care about. It's really what does it offer them. If we get to a point where we can have simple virtual meetings with people, or virtual chess, or virtual interactions that are easy enough to do and facilitates that interaction that they want, maybe across the world or from the senior center to their families at home. I think that could happen. Really depends upon the ease of use.
Do you guys cover augmented reality at all on the blog? Related question, in your mind, will it merge sometime? Where is augmented reality right now in relation to virtual reality?
So augmented reality is very interesting to me, and officially we do cover it on the blog. And what I've seen, there is not the level of useful, practical AR applications yet. For the last 10 years, AR has been a novelty. It has not come out with a killer application that really does something truly useful for people. If Google can succeed in getting those to be something that society accepts, that people can wear without feeling like they look dumb. If we can get a good portion of people starting to wear those, I think that is going to be necessary.
AR has to obviously face that obstacle that VR doesn't, because it's ultimately totally irrelevant if I look cool or uncool with my ski goggles on when I'm having a good time.
Exactly. I think that these smart glasses or wearable devices are going to need to get out there before AR has a platform to exist. For now, it's download an app on your smartphone, get out your smartphone, launch the app, hold it up in front of you, point it at a surface, let's detect the surface. It's not a smooth experience. But if everybody has these smart glasses on, Google Glass, for instance, has an application that you can literally hold up a book in front of you and have it translate the title right in your view. It's awesome. It's amazing. It does need to be faster, but it's, as a proof of concept, it's great. And if we get people wearing these devices, I think that will be the point where AR starts to become truly useful, because you don't have that annoyance of get my phone out. It's just right there.
My friend Mona Eberhardt from Second Life and also Inara, they're big fans of, and she brought my attention to the Epson Moverio.
It's a see-through head-mounted display, much like glass.
Is there like a crossover category? Maybe the Cast IR could also be classified as a crossover device.
Cast IR is see-through augmented reality, but they have these clip-ons that they're going to be releasing, which turn it into a virtual reality. Really, the difference is in the transparency.
Mona is someone who I highly respect. She's a very creative person, and she writes on her blog that she needs to multitask, basically, in the home. And so while she is maybe building some stuff in Second Life, she also has the phone ringing here, or somebody comes in, or her husband wants something, or whatever. What do I know? I don't know her in real life, only in Second Life. So she says for her, these a see-through device would actually really work as a virtual reality interface, because she doesn't want to cut herself off completely from the environment.
Yeah, there was actually, before the Rift, it was a head-mounted display that came out in the last 2 years. Silicon micro display ST1080, I believe it was. So this was a head-mounted display that had a removable cover on the front. So it could be AR, or you could take the cover off and it gave you like 10% transparency. And it could be, AR or VR, basically. So you could kind of choose.
What is your personal perfect scenario of the future? Is it a holodeck at home, or is it far out? Don't make any predictions, 10 years, 20 years, whatever. But your ultimate dream scenario.
I don't know what I want to happen, but I think that the Matrix, in some of the concepts that they presented, is kind of surprisingly, chillingly plausible. Not in the way that robots are going to take over and enslave us, but is there a point where the richest people in the world are going to be able to afford the best virtual reality, and they're just going to pay someone $1,000 a month to feed them through a tube and take care of their bodily functions, and they're going to lay down, and they're going to basically pay to be in a real world heaven? So they'll pay for the service where they can be in this best virtual reality thing that can simulate most or all of their senses, and they can do whatever they want in that world. Is this going to be, are we going to have this world where we have slums of people who can't afford that and live in the real world outside, versus the very richest of us who can afford to live in this real world heaven where anything's possible?
You're making a really great point. That's what I just discussed yesterday, the digital divide in virtual reality, where the real world really deteriorates, but people with the necessary funds don't really have to care about it. On the other hand, is a more positive scenario that when we have virtual reality to do things, let's say an office meeting. That's what Philip Rosedale postulated, I think in 2007, about his vision of Second Life. He said that if we don't need those business parks anymore, those ugly business parks, we can tear them down, because we're going to meet in virtual reality. We would tear them down and re-beautify our world. That could be the positive outcome.
The dystopian futures make for good stories.
That's true.
I do think that there's huge power in this technology. So next week I'm going to a conference in California called Game Developers Conference, and it costs a lot for me to get there. It costs so much money to set up a pretty looking booth for a week, to have people come and transport that stuff there, design it, transport it, paint it, build it, for it to be there for a couple of days, and then bring people from all over the world to wander around this little city of booths, and then rip it down, and then do it again the next year. It's mind-boggling how much money is spent just because we still crave that face-to-face connection. In the world of telephones and Skype and all this stuff, we still find the most powerful, genuine connections are made by being face-to-face. If virtual reality can supplant one of these big conferences, I'm going to just say millions of dollars saved.
A few Second Life-related questions. Joe and I on the podcast always and others too, wreck our brains why Second Life is perceived the way it is perceived. And we know one of the problems is that Linden Lab is not doing a lot of active marketing the breadth of what Second Life is, how big it is, what you can do with it. In a way, it's no surprise that we hear from, it's just people sort of cheating on their wives, loners who need a Second Life. That's where the name comes from. And C, what did I hear? It's good for business meetings, which it is not. Where do you think this comes from, that the younger crowd, and I'm assuming that you're a little bit younger than me, I'm 43, and these guys, the makers, Palmalaki, all these people are in their 20s or 30s, that they have from our vantage point, a kind of a warped perception of what Second Life is. Where does this come from?
I think one of the biggest problems is it has a massive learning curve. And I am a lifelong gamer, but I'm also somebody who has been watching technology for my entire life. And one of the key things that I see is usability is just hugely important. There is technology out there that's incredibly exciting. I used UMPCs back in the day when it was a tiny screen with a little keyboard, and it was trying to run a full Windows operating system. And I knew that this was a useful, amazing piece of technology to be able to fit in my pocket, but I also knew that it was very difficult to use, and only somebody who was really passionate about it would go through the pain of using it to, you had to want to use it, basically.
So it is a value proposition, because Photoshop is a terrible interface if you don't know your way around.
I think that's a great example. I use Photoshop a lot, and it's absolutely incredibly powerful and incredibly complicated. So yes, I absolutely think it's a value proposition. Second Life is the same way. It obviously has huge, awesome things that you can do with it, and it's a really cool universe. But even as someone like me who is a lifelong gamer and has spent just way too much time playing games, hard ones too, it's very hard to get into. It needs to be easy, and it needs to have a hook, and it needs to lead people there gradually and not ask them to do a lot of research.
What I find interesting is that gamers have a harder time getting into Second Life, and I think I know why that is. And you hinted at it, because Second Life does not tell you what to do at all. You can build a spaceship, you can fly around with it, you can build a shooter game, then play it with others, but you have to make it, or you go somewhere where somebody already made it. There is no extrinsic reward system. So is that maybe something that the gamer really needs? I'm saying this not, I'm not judging here. I'm just observing a gamer. And it's interesting because my son is 10 and he is kind of a gamer, I think. He needs to be told exactly what do I need to do and what do I get for it.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And so I spent a lot of time playing Minecraft. I don't know if you've ever played it before.
We are in a Minecraft-obsessed household.
What I was going to say is that in Minecraft, there's very little guidance. You're plopped into a randomly generated world. For some people, that blank canvas is paralyzing. And I have seen this coming up in not just games, but also, in my younger life, being educated. For some people, when you sit them down and say, draw a picture or write an essay, their first question is, what do I draw? What should my essay be about? I feel like we have a tendency, maybe in modern education, or maybe it's just in the US, to teach people not how to think, but what to think. And when you give them these blank canvases, it can become very paralyzing. So I have some friends who love Minecraft, and I love Minecraft because I can just build. I can just build what's in my, I can build a town with my friends and live in a house, but there's no objectives. There's no real goals. There's no real progression. And
God, you need to visit us in Second Life. You can do exactly the same thing and so much more. Oh my God.
And then I've had other friends that, some of my best friends, and I'll say, hey, a bunch of us are playing. You should totally jump on and try. But there's some people that just say, what do I do? I say, build a house, mine some materials, and they just say, okay, I did that. Now what or why? And that's not a bad thing against them. They just really like structured games as opposed to this build whatever's in your head.
This is really well stated.
Are we going to have time to hash out our first virtual reality talk show matter?
Oh yeah. Okay, so then let me do a mea culpa here. So I saw your RiftMax virtual talk show. I think I completely understand why you guys described it as the very first virtual talk show, because you are interfacing into a virtual space with hardware, and you distinguish virtual reality from a virtual world, which is Second Life is a virtual world. So that's what I understand. What I don't understand is if you in fact distinguishing it like this, because you're saying that virtual worlds like Second Life, I have to access, download it, I have to sign up, log in, and then I'm in. And in virtual reality, I'm just there. Then I would counter-argue, well, I have to download your theater and be invited into it in order to take part. If you're arguing that virtual worlds, I'm interfacing in virtual worlds not with a hardware device, so I'm just, I'm separated from it. I'm not really in it because the keyboard is between me and the world. Then I kind of understand what you're trying to say.
Mm-hmm. So I listened to your previous episode where you're talking about this with Joe, and I think that we're having mostly a semantic issue here. I think we're using the same terms in different ways, and I think I might have a good solution to at least explain our differences. So this was what we called the first live virtual reality talk show, and certainly there have been live talk shows done in Second Life. I think the word that's being used differently here is reality. So for me and the growing, VR movement right now, virtual reality, the word reality is talking about immersion. And I understand that people can be very immersed in Second Life as well. But I think a better word for immersed in Second Life would be invested. I think that when I'm saying immersion, I'm talking about, do I feel like I'm physically in the world? When you guys are talking about immersion, I think you're talking about investment, as in I care about the world. And when you're talking about reality, I think you guys are talking about society and culture happening in this virtual space. You're seeing emergent society and emergent culture in a virtual space. And I think that's what you're referring to as reality. And I totally agree that that's there in Second Life. And I fully get that.
Let me jump in really quickly. You're making excellent points, and I would agree. But I have to tell you that I have experienced myself in doing my video series, and I have seen people with really bad graphics, with really bad frame rates, and they have a connection to their avatar in Second Life. They will always say immersion, I'm in there. Case in point, the 86-year-old Parkinson's patient in San Diego that I covered in one of the last episodes. I interviewed her for 2 hours or longer, and she said, this is how I feel inside. When I look at myself on the screen, and she looks kind of like a 25-year-old woman, turning into a mermaid and jumping in the water. I am in the water. I can feel the water. People are immersed despite that distance. I think it's a lot easier to, of course, feel when you put the Oculus on and you're in there. Yes, you're in there, versus on the screen. I mean, I have that problem all the time when somebody looks over my shoulder and I tell them, "Look how awesome this is. I'm in there." They go like, "Whoa, you're nuts. You're not in there. You're looking at something on a screen."
Yeah. I think that there's a difficulty here, of course, because immersion is not either you're immersed or you're not. It is a gradient. So I have used the Oculus Rift with plenty of different demos, and a demo where you have the Rift on and you feel like you're in the world visually, but you're sitting there using a mouse and keyboard, is not as immersive as a demo where you're using the Razer Hydra and you're standing up and you're controlling your own hands. So the more natural the input becomes, the more immersed people tend to feel. Specifically controlling the view with your head instead of your mouse, I mean, that is at its base as foundational a sense as feeling. Because our whole world is perceived through our eyes, and looking left and looking right and expecting the world to move around us as we do that is just, it's there from the very beginning. So when you take that and apply it to these virtual worlds, you are in there in a different way than controlling it with your mouse or looking at an avatar. So I can understand an argument for saying I'd feel like I'm in there even when you're just looking at a screen or at an avatar. But as a gamer who's played tons of first-person shooters, even when it's in a first-person view, I don't think it's useful to say every virtual space is virtual reality, because I'm saying reality has to do with immersion as opposed to just a virtual recreation of something.
I agree with you, and there is no doubt that the grade of immersion is a lot higher when I put that thing on. There is absolutely no doubt. Your example that you played countless games and there's no comparison to when you're actually in there, that doesn't surprise me at all, because a game is not Second Life and Second Life is not a game, in the sense that in Second Life I create my own persona. You are then immersed in the culture. Your actions, they follow you. It's like being part of a community.
I totally understand that. I played World of Warcraft for too long, and I had friends in there, I had enemies, I had virtual money that was important to me, I had tons of time invested. People knew my character, which I would say they knew me. There was culture in that game. There was economy. I totally understand all that. And I know that that's present in Second Life as well. And so, yeah, I think that when you guys are saying reality and immersion, you're talking about investment when you say immersion, and then reality is about these human elements that are in the game. Whereas when I say immersion, I'm talking about feeling as your human senses as though you're inside the game. And then when I say reality, I'm not talking about the cultural stuff. I'm just talking about, does my brain think that my body is in there?
No, I totally agree. But, there are studies out there, and the latest one, and it even got some play in the mainstream media, that if you watch your avatar in Second Life eat candy, there are mirror neurons in the brain that tell you actually ate the candy, so you don't have a craving in real life.
Wow, I'm going to have to try that one out.
Didn't work for me, I'm telling you. But can I say that now that we have Oculus compatibility in Second Life, that can us Second Lifers please join your VR movement if we say that you actually did the first talk show in virtual reality?
No one's trying to take anything away from Second Life.
We're so sensitive, you have no idea, because the mainstream media is constantly trotting out these things that we're abandoning everything.
Well, count me on your side, because I have an appreciation for Second Life and what it is. I think that as soon as you reach that threshold of natural input and immersive, let's call it immersive virtual reality is what I'm talking about, compared to your virtual reality, which is more about society and investment and culture and stuff.
No. Don't pinpoint me on that. I care about immersion on top of the culture.
When you get the Oculus Rift and can feel the difference between seeing your avatar on the screen versus feeling like you're in your avatar's shoes, I think I'll be very interested to hear how you think that those differences impact you.
They will, but I'm telling you, I feel like this is me right now. Again, I'm not dismissing what you're saying, that there is a big difference between overcoming this distance finally. That's why we're so excited that these goggles are here, where we can overcome this distance because we already have the world.
No, I get you. I could sit there and play World of Warcraft and say, I really identify with my character because I've spent so much time investing in him and all that stuff. And I could say, yeah, this feels like me in the game. But if you sat there and asked me and said, do you think you're inside the world of Azeroth? I'd say, no, I know I'm sitting. When you put on the Rift, let me know, because I think there will be moments, brief moments, where you may forget just briefly that you're not sitting in your house.
Ben, believe me, I don't doubt that at all. I'm very much looking forward to that. There is no doubt that the level of, you keep saying invested, but I would say it's an enhancement of the level of immersion that is absolutely huge.
Well, so maybe the real difference is that to get to the immersion that you're feeling, it takes time for you or someone else. It takes time for them to slowly identify with their character.
You got it.
Versus the virtual reality that I'm talking about.
It's not your character, it's you.
It takes time for you to identify with your second self. But in the virtual reality that I'm talking about, when you pop on a headset, your brain says, oh, I feel like I'm standing somewhere else.
And that's why Second Life is the world made for the goggles, because if you put on the headset, you're not in a room, you're not on one roller coaster. No, you're in a universe of thousands and thousands and thousands of interconnected islands where you can take a bicycle, on the mainland at least, and ride with that bicycle in SL for maybe a week, and you will not reach the ocean. That's not counting Joe's 1920s Berlin, where you can't show up with jeans, you know?
Yeah.
Because that's going to be your problem, Ben. If you go in there with jeans in your avatar, then she's going to kick you out.
I've already acquired my proper dress. I've already joined Joe in the bar for a drink, so I think I'll be all right on that front. I'll be very interested to hear what you think about the differences between screen versus headset.
I am not a proponent at all of the screen. I want the holodeck in my lifetime.
Yeah, no. I'm just excited to hear how it changes your connection to your second self.
Other husbands go golfing on the weekend. I don't.
I'm ready to be Second Life's biggest cheerleader if they can get over the difficult learning curve.
You will get over it when you know that behind that stupid thing that I need to learn is an awesome candy store.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great comparison.
So that was Ben Lang, and here's the additional recording I did with him after he had already flown out here and waiting for a Game Developers Conference to start. More info on hardware devices, starting with the VR treadmill Virtuix.
The Virtuix Omni is, like you said, it's an omnidirectional treadmill. So this is a unit with no moving parts like a normal treadmill. Got a curved dish, and you wear special shoes that your feet can slide in, and you can spin around 360 degrees, run in any direction. Capacitive tracking technology built into the base that can sense your feet, and then developers are going to be able to use that to integrate walking directly into the game. I've tried it a couple of times and been able to get a sense of, the walking motion, and it's pretty good. There seems to be no real competitor in that field. I mean, while there's a lot of goggly do and wearable stuff, but in the treadmill field? Yeah, there's actually something by another guy in Europe. It's called the Cyberth or Cyberith. It's similar in concept, but he is not as far along. So the Virtuix Omni already went to Kickstarter, raised over $1 million, if I remember correctly, and they are in production and they'll be shipping. The Cyberith looks like it could be a good alternative, although they're not, ready for production or anything like that. At this point, it's still prototype. Briefly, handheld and gloves. What's on the market, kickstarted or on the horizon in that area? So there's a company called 6 Sense, and they made the technology in this product called the Razer Hydra, which came out in 2011. It's neat technology, but at the time it didn't really have a good place to play in, because they had this really great one-to-one hand tracking technology, but the games that were on the market then couldn't really take good advantage of it. Now with the Rift, when you are basically putting players in the body of of an avatar, of a character in a game, having that one-to-one input is essential to immersion. And so the Razer Hydra has had huge demand and is basically out of stock at this point for people who want to use it with the Rift. And as someone who has, it's so much more immersive than using just a keyboard and mouse. So they stopped producing that with Razer, and they went on to kickstart a new system, which is improved in a bunch of ways over Hydra, the biggest of which being it's not only wireless, but it also has, instead of 2 trackers for your hands, it has 5 trackers.
That's the STEM system?
Yeah, it's the STEM system. You can put 2 on your feet, 2 on your hands, 1 on your head or on your chest, and really get your whole body into the world instead of just your hands. That's looking like it's going to be very good. I've had my hands on some prototypes, and the tracking improvement from the Razer to the STEM is much higher performance and much bigger range, which is really great.
What's interesting is in Ready Player One, I don't know if you've read it, the character has things glued to his body that give him the sensation when he's hit or shot. Can you see something like this in the future as well?
Yeah, absolutely. There actually are some products like that. There was a vest somebody came out with not too long ago that used compressed air. But there was also another serious attempt at that kind of thing that was on Kickstarter within the last year. The name escapes me right now, but basically used what are called tactile transducers, which are basically speakers that instead of making sound, they rumble. So they put this all over this suit, and the idea is, developers be able to use those to shake your body in different ways. It was a neat idea, but their Kickstarter failed for a number of reasons. But it's definitely not only plausible, but people want it, and I think we're going to see that at some point because haptics are really important. And before we go on to something else, there's this company called Tactical Haptics who are working on a motion input controller, much like the STEM or the Razer Hydra, but they have these sliding bars built into the handle that you grip, and they call this technology reactive grip. And basically these sliding bars can make your hands feel these sensations of twisting, pushing, and pulling. And it's so much more immersive than just your typical, rumble in a gamepad controller. If you have a sword in your hand and you thrust it into somebody, you can feel in your handle a resistance push back against you. It's a really cool sensation, and they've been trying to get that off the ground for a little while now, and I really hope that they succeed because the technology is really neat.
I've seen with the Virtrix one demo where one guy, he had a gun. Are there companies that develop a piece of hardware that could in virtual reality be a gun or then morph into an axe or whatever you're playing, something you hold in your hand that has multiple purposes?
So one of the cool things that Sixth Sense is doing is they are basically making their sensor units adaptable for other accessories. So their idea is they want to get these STEM base out that'll be kind of the wireless tracking center for whatever you want to do. And then if you want to buy a cool gun that fits one of their sensors into it from a company that can make a cool looking gun with, rumble feedback and all that stuff, then you can do that. So basically they're willing to license out that technology to be able to put it, you could have a tennis racket or a sword or a gun or a baseball bat in a bunch of different things. And even people can make their own.
Yeah, it needs to be something violent, of course, because that's all we do, and that's great. I love it. Actually, I don't. So basically, then you could also envision that we design it and we 3D print it and then put the sensor in there.
Yep.
That's amazing. It is amazing. Okay, finally, the Leap Motion is a tiny little device. We're sponsored by them, but I really also love it. Where does the Leap fit into this ecosystem?
Leap is interesting for exactly the reason you said, in that there is nothing. It's accurate hand sensing, and that can be a good thing. The challenge is, though, so much of the last forever of game design has involved buttons and sticks. I think that for going forward, for the immediate future, that's going to be important. But there's lots of non-game, more experimental uses for the Leap, lots of interesting human-computer interaction where you don't need to have full game input where you have a trigger, things like that, but you might want to do neat manipulation of data, the in-air, grab and pull to zoom in and out. All that stuff can be really cool. And the more natural you can make it feel, as in if we could eliminate those sticks and buttons, if we could get rid of those and have these natural inputs where we just reach our hand out and into the scene and grab with our hand instead of pressing a button to grab, the more natural it gets, the more immersive it is.
Final question, the emotive.
The promise there is extremely exciting. The concept of being able to think about things and have them happen in your game world is just amazing. And if we could reach a point where it is practical and accurate, I will be the first to say this is awesome, let's have it everywhere. I think with the emotive epic, which I have tried myself, they're a little bit early, I think, in terms of we don't really have the accuracy that we need yet to have natural input. You need to train the system. A lot of what appears sometimes to be thought control is actually you use certain muscles like winking or smiling, and it's reading those signals for input. So yeah, you can train yourself to a certain point and make those things feel natural once you basically work on the muscle memory, just like playing a piano. But the end all be all would be think it and let it happen. And there's ongoing research. The brain is incredibly complicated. I mean, it's great there's a product out there that lets people start doing basic things. Like I've tried it before and was able to fly a little helicopter either up or down. It's not groundbreaking, but progress gets made by people working on this stuff. And instead of having a huge expensive machine that's locked away in a research lab that people can't play with, having a device like the emotive out there that developers can get their hands on easily to start toying with and experimenting with and saying, where does this work and where does it not work and how can we make it better? That's how you get progress made quickly. So it's great to have that on the market.
Great. If it leads us to, as humans, to actually go into a sort of a meditative state of extreme focus, and it facilitates that, or it helps us to actually get away from the distraction and be more focused, like a musician would be in a performance, for instance, or an athlete, that might be an interesting outcome of these thought control devices.
Yeah, I think we're at a point, and I may be wrong, but I do think that we're at least to the point where we can read the waves and understand a little bit about how relaxed someone might be. And that in itself could be really cool for, let's say, a virtual reality meditation training game, where if you're not relaxed, the scene is stormy and chaotic, but if you can take yourself into a calm, zen-like state, the sun comes out and the birds sing, and I think that would be awesome. It's so cool to have these commodity devices now available where anyone who knows a little bit about programming can start to toy with this stuff.
That was Ben. Joe, any thoughts? We're running out of time. I guess we're still friends with him, so that's great. They want us Second Life folks on the board of the revolution.
I'm glad that they are interested in Second Life, and I hope we can invite them over, see what happens when they come on over. And I've been trying to invite them, but I think that they're waiting for the commercial version.
All right, we're running out of time. Joe, what is new? You have a new Flickr group.
Yes, I've created another Flickr group because there aren't enough of those already. And it's called Second Life is Looking Good. The main purpose of it is to have some sort of big pile of very nice screenshots that we can show to friends and people and journalists whenever they say that Second Life graphics are so bad. It is meant for outsiders, not for other Second Life users, but it is to show off how good Second Life can look if you've got a proper computer.
Folks can also use the Twitter hashtag SLLooksGoodToday, which I also like. I put that out and a few folks picked that up. You alerted me to a video on YouTube which is called Musikalische Flugstunden mit Oculus Rift. Because we want to go out with that music.
It's so groovy.
Describe briefly what's happening here.
It is There's a guy who's flying through a video clip on acid or something.
And he sings along with it. He improvises some German hip-hop stuff.
Well, yeah.
And there's just sort of cubicles and there's geometric figures in there, and he just improvises along and then reminds himself that what he just improvised is probably not so good.
Yeah, if the Oculus Rift goes global, teenage and MTV starts broadcasting music with video clips like that, they're never ever gonna leave their rooms again, which would be a great thing.
The video is linked on our blog.
Na super.
I'll talk to you next week and we'll have some reports of you with Oculus and hopefully me too.
Yes.
Okay, bye, Joe.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Das ist schon krass. Also das ist gerade eben, das ist ja ein Erlebnis, das wirst du nie in der echten Welt haben. Außer du bist ein Roboter und gehst in dein eigenes Gehirn vielleicht. Yeah, aha. Das ist Oculus Rift, Oculus Rift, Oculus Rift. Wenn es dich trifft, dann mitten ins Gesicht, mitten ins Gesicht. Da schwimmen irgendwelche Fische durch die Gegend. Guck dir die Fische an, was ein Fisch so machen kann, wenn eine Oculus Rift dran hat.
The Drax Files Radio Hour with Joe Yardley is a weekly production of Basic Drax Entertainment. The show is supported by Caravel Design, Joey Abema, Rag Media, Vika Creations, Ziki Questi, Escapades, Botanical, Death Row Designs, Ciaran Laval, and Mona Aberhart. Special thanks to Bill May for providing the station ID this week. Contact the show via Skype, Drax Files, Avatar Drax Files, or email radio@draxfiles.com.